Welcome again to All Over the Map. I am really excited and pleased to be joined by Mahlon Mitchell here to my right. Mahlon, thanks so much for sitting down with me today to talk about a variety of things, but I really appreciate you coming on the program.
No, glad to be on the program. Thanks for coming to our office.
Yeah, so, it's been such an interesting time with everything going on, and we're going to get into politics. Now, we haven't talked about politics yet on this show. Today's the first. We'll get into it a little bit. But before we get to any of that stuff, I really want people to know more about you. Obviously people will recognize your name with your recent run, getting into the governor's race here this year. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and what you're about?
That's a long story.
Okay. Well, take it piece by piece. Yeah.
I was
Where'd you grow up?
I was actually born in Milwaukee. We lived there for a very short time though. And we moved to south suburb of Chicago called University Park. But I actually grew up from third grade until finishing high school in Delavan, Wisconsin, which is, if people don't know, it's right between Lake Geneva and Janesville, essentially, south central part of the state. And we might move there because of my dad's job. So I got my older brother graduated from Delavan as well. And my younger brother, I have two brothers. And I got on the fire department relatively young. I got on the job at 19 years old. Actually, out of high school, I thought I wanted to be a chef. So I went to culinary school for a year in the Cooking and Hospitality Institute of Chicago. And I thought I wanted to be a chef, and I realized very quickly that sucked. Like, I didn't want to be a chef. I don't even know why I went to school. My parents weren't happy with me because they paid for the full year. But so I got on the fire department relatively quickly. My older brother actually started the tradition. He's a firefighter in Atlanta, Georgia. My younger brother's a firefighter in St. Paul, Minnesota. So it's in our blood. It's in our DNA to be firefighters, I guess, to give back. But I got on the Madison Fire Department in 1997.
Wow. That's an early time to find a career to jump into. I mean, a lot of us at that point in our lives are still kind of filtering through what are we going to do with the rest of our lives, or what career are we going to get into. So that's pretty unique to have, at 19 years old, have a career path.
Yeah, I love it, and I still love it to this day. I'm in my 21st year, and I still love going to work. I still love hopping on the rig. I still love responding to emergencies. It's, in my opinion, the best job, in the world. And on my days off, I get to represent firefighters by way of being their union president here at the state level as well as at the local level in Madison area.
Well, it's clear, that service is really important to you. But how did you have that progression to kind of take that step from, starting out working as a firefighter and now to the point where you're representing the firefighters across the state?
Yeah, you know what? When I got in the job when I was 20 years old, I wanted to do something outside of the job as well, and I got involved in our charitable arm of our union. We have what's called Local 311 Charities that actually started from the 1998. I don't know if you remember the bus fire on the west side of Madison, where a man went on a city bus with a carton of gasoline, and essentially poured the gasoline on the bus, poured it on some people, and then lit a match. That was in 1998. And that really tore a lot of, people apart. It tore some communities apart. It brought up a lot of mental health issues. The person who did it had some mental health issues, but it was bad. And the firefighters want to do something beyond just responding to the emergency and responding to the call like we do. So we started Local 311 Charities. We raised close to over $200,000 for the victims of that bus fire. Essentially, we got our 501c3 status, and then we said, hey, let's not just do it for this one-time cause. Let's actually give back as much as we can. So firefighters started taking money out of their checks, putting it into our charitable arm, and we started put trustees in place and put a structure in place, and I became one of those trustees very early in my career. And that's kind of like the catalyst for getting me and taking the progression from being a trustee in our charities to actually being an executive board member, executive steward, being on the state executive board, and then eventually becoming the president.
I think some of the work that firefighters do is just some of the most incredible and self-giving work that I think someone can do. It's, you have to be brave, you have to know what you're doing, you have to stay calm under pressure and in extreme circumstances that a lot of people may have challenges with. So what do you think you knew about yourself early on that gave yourself the confidence that you can handle those type of situations?
I've always been enamored by firefighters and what they've done. And what really, I mean, it should be a better story, but what the reality of it all is that when my brother became a firefighter, he came to me and said, "You got to check this job out." It's like, he goes, "It's the best." It's like a team. I've always been involved in team sports. And firefighting is essentially like being part of a big team. You have a company of 4 people. And you are an engine company or a ladder company, and that's your team. And then you're part of the bigger team when we respond to calls and fires, depending how the severity of the call. But I'm part of a team of 400 plus people, and then in the state, 4,000 plus people. So it's part of being a team, and a team aspect is what really drove me, or that really was appealing to me. And then the job itself, again, like you said, I mean, we respond to our community on the worst days of their lives. And when people are at their worst, we have to be at our best. So that also, I mean, the excitement of it intrigues me, of course, but helping people has always been in my DNA. And that's how I get involved in politics as well.
Is that did that come from your parents? Did it come from home? Like, where? I mean, you say it's in your DNA, but like I know from my experience growing up, the reason I do what I do, the reason I work for a nonprofit and try to give back as much as possible is because my parents set that example. Did you have that same type of situation?
It really was. I mean, and we're all byproducts of our parents' upbringing, good or bad, right? So yeah, it was instilled in me at a very early age to help others and to care about other people, and take care of people as much as you can. So. It was instilled in me at a young age, and I try to do it with my kids as well. But yeah, I mean, just caring about people. We need more of that in this day and age, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, that's we see some of the things going on in politics, and we won't talk about all the stuff. We're going to focus more here on the state, but just seems like some general decency and respect could go a long way if we had that throughout across the board, in my opinion. But unfortunately, that's not there. As we see it too much.
We're not going to talk about Trump?
I don't know. I mean, if you want to.
I do a great Donald Trump impression. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. I actually call this chocolate Trump.
Nice.
Because I'm black.
Very good. Yeah.
So it's chocolate Trump.
I got it.
Okay.
I got you.
You weren't expecting this, were you?
Do we got a hashtag on that? You got a hashtag chocolate Trump on that? Is that we got that patented yet?
Chocolate Trump. I have the best Trump impersonation of all Trump impersonation. Just true. I'm sorry.
Agreed. So, well, there's a curveball for me. Thanks a lot. Getting back to a little bit more about where you got in to make the decision to go into politics here and try to make this run. How did that start? Did someone approach you? Did you pursue it yourself? Like, how did that get started?
You know what? In 2011, I became president of the Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin, and Scott Walker became governor took over as governor January that year, same year. And when Act 10 happened, the changes to collective bargaining for public sector employees, if you remember all the protests and everything that happened, I spoke at a couple of those rallies. As firefighters, police officers, we were exempt from those changes. So we had a decision to make whether we were going to take our exemption and just sit by and see what happens and not be part of the protests or part of the rallies, or were we going to go and be part of fighting back with our other brothers and sisters in labor and in the union world. And we decided at a very early start that we were going to fight back with everyone else, even though we were exempt, because, as Martin Luther King always said, injury to one is an injury to all. And, you got to stand for something. So Firefighters were there every step of the way. We're still continuing to fight any challenges or any attacks on working people. And really what happened was, I mean, I wasn't thinking about getting into politics or ever running for anything, quite frankly. Other than this position, this position was, I don't want to say I didn't want to do it, but it was more bestowed upon me because of some things that were happening internally in the Firefighters Association. So I gave a couple speeches. I think my first speech I said, which was someone else's line, my predecessor's line actually, but I said it, that the House of Labor is on fire and the firefighters are here to put it out. And that kind of, people liked that, so then they asked me to speak at a couple other rallies, pretty much everyone after that. And that kind of propelled me into some sort of a limelight when it came to labor rights. Then I went around the state and some places around the country talking about the same things. And then there was this Facebook post that drafted me to run for governor in 2000 in a recall election. And I knew I wasn't running for governor then, but I was approached by someone to run for lieutenant governor. So I actually ran for lieutenant governor in the recall in 2012. And then, again, 4 years later, tried to help to unseat Walker again with Mary Burke and some others, and that didn't work out. So this time I decided, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and give them hell, so to speak. So I ran. It was an 8-way primary. I got second place. Tony Evers got first. And now we'll see what happens November 6th. I hope we can pull it off. But me personally, getting in the political arena wasn't something that I was bucking to do. It was more of I thought we needed a candidate that could excite and inspire people to get out and vote, and those that haven't voted in the past. Because midterm elections are generally lower turnout. So I wanted to, and I'm still helping to get people out to vote and make their voices heard because it's important.
That's part of what we wanted to do in the timing of this interview too, just to kind of get that information out there and have people hear from you again. Before we move on, I have to go back to this time frame of you getting into this and starting it. So at that point, 2011, we just learned you're 41. I just learned you're 41, so you're in your 30s, early 30s at that point.
33, yeah.
And you're the president of the statewide firefighters.
Yeah.
And you're gonna jump into try politics. Wow, that's bold. That's bold. I like it.
It was all in a flurry. I mean, it was more like, I don't want to say it's a calling because I didn't win, but right, it was more like it just seemed like the right thing to do, and it was just all in a flurry and just bang, bang, bang. I mean, just being state president at a young age, and I'm the first African American state president actually in the country within the International Association of Firefighters. It was just all happened so fast. But you look back, and it was a lot, and I didn't know what I didn't know, so that made it easier, I guess. Now I know more than. We all know more as we get older, but now this time I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah.
Back then I probably didn't.
So talk to me about, I mean, you just said how you got into it, but what was that process like when you made the decision to run, and what was the experience like to have, obviously you were a well-known voice. You said you finished second in the primaries. At that point,
did you vote for me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I did.
Good answer.
Well, I mean, look, just like you, what you talked about inspiring, or why you wanted to get into it, was what I liked about you, was that for a while now, I've felt like this state and politics in general needs more people that are just going to tell it like it is. That are going to and also going to inspire people, energize people to care again, to get out and vote and care about the political process and what that means. Because when we don't have that, we have people disengaged and tuning out and not going out and voting. That's when things can happen, like happened with the last presidential race. That's right. when you see Scott Walker, who I'm not a fan of, have multiple terms and win multiple elections. Like, how does that happen? It's because people aren't excited enough about the other candidates. So let's get somebody exciting in there.
Yeah, and people don't feel like their voices are being heard at all. I mean, even Democrats or Republicans, right? The people that are really hurting, that need elected officials to do the most for them, are the ones that are not voting. It's a very, very weird paradigm shift or paradox, whatever the word is that I'm looking for here in our country, and it's almost by design, right? Because people are left out. Not everyone has a lobbyist up the street here at the Capitol. So who speaks for them? Well, no one. And then who speaks to them? Pretty much no one, because we're going around talking about middle class wages. We're talking about school funding and everything else, all things that are important, obviously. We don't talk about those that are living below middle class wages, those that actually need help, those that don't have a choice where they send their kids to school, those that don't have a choice as to actually having a job that pays more than $15 an hour. So those are people that need help a lot as well. And we also need to inspire them to vote, because a lot of people think politics, well, doesn't affect me. I made my daughter vote. My daughter didn't vote before. I mean, she's only 20 years old, but for 2 years she didn't vote, even though I thought she did register and everything else. But the first time she voted was actually for me. And young people, all they think about when they think about politics, all it is noise to them. I mean, you watch MSNBC or CNN or Fox, whatever you want to watch, and it's just people talking at each other, not talking to each other, not solving any real problems. So I ran because I believe that, Democrats and Republicans have to actually work together to get things done. I'm a Democrat, no doubt, but I believe that in order for government to function and actually do its job, and that is to help people, the role of government is to do for those what they can't do for themselves. And to actually have that done, it requires Democrats and Republicans working together. Not always agreeing on everything. That's why it's not meant to be a rubber stamp, but it's meant to have people come together, work together for the greater good of the people. Now that sounds like pie in the sky type of logic, but it's true. It's that simple to me as to how government's supposed to work. So I was trying to get, and still trying to get, people to vote. People will say, well, politics doesn't matter to me. They don't care about me. Well, everything you do, whether you like it or not, is shaped by politics, and someone is making decisions on your behalf, whether you like it or not. So you should be involved in the arena.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people did. They just turned inward and said, if I take care of myself, take care of my business, then all of that isn't going to affect me. But eventually it will. Enough changes, enough things happen. I think it's interesting because my wife was born in the Netherlands, and she had her dad was from Wisconsin, her mom was Dutch, and anyways, but she was born there and then grew up in the States. Primarily, but she had a whole side of the family in the Netherlands and go back and visit all the time. So she's very familiar with their culture, their government, and just the differences between the approach in some of the European countries and how it works and how they have 9, 10, 11 political parties, and they're all represented, and it's people that have to come together and make decisions that are good for the whole. And we have such a divisive system where it's one side against another, and you can pit them directly, and then there's just that divide. And so a lot of people just figure, they see all the arguing, they see all the things not getting done, they see them not coming together and maybe making decisions based on everyone's or the majority's best interest, and then you lose them and they tune out. And with young voters, we need them to be energized, we need them to come through. But also we've got to re-energize everybody. And so, when you see people like yourself or others with a strong voice getting into putting themselves out there, that's what I think, needs to continue for us to propel forward and get things back to the way they should be.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's my soapbox. I'll give you one.
You should run.
No, man, I can't do it. I'm working on enough stuff over here. Yeah. So I know you obviously are very familiar with the candidates that are currently in the race. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us about what you see, what you support, what you agree with, and who you like.
Well, I'm a Tony Evers fan, obviously. Even though we ran against each other in the primary, there's no doubt my goal, and I don't know how political you want to get, but I'm just going to say it. My goal was always to get rid of Scott Walker. Me and Scott Walker actually went to the same high school. He's from Delavan. He's 10 years older than I am, though. We obviously took some different classes.
You got way better hair, too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But my goal, November 13th, when I got in the race last year, was to get rid of Scott Walker, and my goal has not changed in that. So I'm supporting Tony Evers. I've been involved in stumping for him as a surrogate, also going around and talking with, trying to bring our supporters, people that supported me, over to the Tony Evers side, which is not a hard sell, but our firefighters, we've endorsed Tony Evers, the Firefighters State Association. So I'm all in with Tony, and I think we can win this time.
What do you like about Tony and his approach to government?
Well, he's got an educational background. I mean, he knows a lot about education, and he cares. And you don't get that a lot with elected officials. Like there's like when you sit and talk with Tony, while people may say, well, he's not that exciting. Well, he's not, doesn't, put asses in the seats, so to speak. But what he does is he cares. Like if you sit down and talk with him, he generally cares about people. And I like that. And I don't think Scott Walker does. I think Scott Walker cares about his next step and his political ambitions. So he cares. And I think he knows that we need an educational system that is fair and equitable for everyone. Every child should have a great education. I like how he says, if it's good enough for our kids, it's good enough for the state. And when we talk about an economy that works for everyone, not just a select few, I don't believe people should have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Our governor will talk about us having a low unemployment rate, which is good, but it's only one metric of a stable economy or a good economy, a thriving economy. Because there are people that are working 2, 3. I was at a rally a week and a half ago, I think, at a McDonald's where they were asking for $15 an hour in Milwaukee. And fast food workers that are working like 3 or 4 jobs just to provide for their families. I mean, what are you supposed to do, right? But healthcare is another issue that Tony talks about. And I don't believe, that my mother's a diabetic. I don't believe that a senior needs to choose between paying for their prescription drugs or paying their rent or their mortgage. A child should not go to the hospital because their parents can't afford it. So we need to have a health care system. I believe in Badger Care for All, meaning that options there for everyone to enroll into the Badger Care. And I just think our educational system, our economy, our health care, other issues, criminal justice reform is needed. We have the highest African American male incarceration rate in the country. It's crazy.
In Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's crazy, and there's nothing being done about it. I mean, we have a governor that says, when asked about criminal justice reform, asked about Lincoln Hills, which is a place up north, about visiting these institutions in the jails, and the Department of Corrections has come under fire recently. He says there's no need for him to visit a jail. Well, we spend more money on the Department of Corrections than we do on actually educating our young people by way of the UW system. So you should be visiting jails and seeing how money is being spent. So we just need a change, man. We need to get Wisconsin in a better place, and politically, and our political acumen, the way we talk with each other, the way that we deal with each other politically is just bad. It's bad all around. It's bad at the federal level. It's divisive here at the state level, and that's by design, because if you keep people divided, you can always rule over them. And Scott Walker said he's going to divide and conquer our state, and he's done that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think as a whole, especially people that I grew up in the state, I've lived in the state my whole life, but I always feel like regardless of people that I had different political views with or different ideas then. There was at least we could communicate with respect. We could see common ground, all those type of things. And I feel like that our state politicians were like that for quite a while up until more recently. And I know there's been so much money infused into politics and all of that. And that's the big issue. I still remember, do you remember back in, I think it was like the mid 90s, John McCain, Russ Feingold got campaign finance reform, and they were, it was this big accomplishment. They're making a big deal about it, and the public didn't get it. Like, it wasn't communicated well to the public about what that actually was accomplishing. Yeah. And so people were just like, what's that? And they just kind of, okay, great. They did something together. That's nice, but we don't get it. And now we're seeing, after that's been dismantled, how big of an issue that is, and what if that law had stayed in place the way it was, how much different could the world look right now in politics?
And now we have Citizens United. I mean, where
Yeah.
corporations are considered to be people, and they can give unlimited amounts of money to candidate or an issue advocacy for or against a candidate, and it is crazy. I mean, the lobby and the corporations and the top 1%. And I'm not a big person that talks about 1%ers, this, that, and the other, but it's just true. People at the top are always going to do well, but for some of them, it's doing well is not enough. They need more and more, and they don't care. Like we talked about earlier, they don't care about people here in the middle or people here at the bottom. It's like, I'm going to get mine. I've got so much time on this earth. I'm going to do everything I can to get mine, leave what I want for my kids, whatever, and step on whoever's in their way. And unfortunately, politics has become, who could sit at a table as the people who write big checks?
Well, and I think, too, that I have nothing against people having a lot of money. That's great. So they earn a bunch of money. Fantastic.
I like rich people. They buy me drinks all the time. I have no problem with that.
But the thing is, too, it's the ones that that have a lot of money and that are infusing it back into the political system are the ones that are gaining more capital, increasing their wealth, and that's really what their goal is. There's plenty of nice, wealthy people out there who do good things with their money, make some incredible accomplishments, give back to the community. There's plenty of people still like that. So, that's another way of I think, us that in this system, they divided people by categorizing them as, the 1% or all rich people are bad and greedy. That's not the case. People are people, and we all want the same stuff. There's different ways to get there, but like you said, when the people that are struggling, there's no help, there's no hope for those people, that's when we get problems.
Yeah. And that's where we're at, and that's by design for some that, if people aren't voting, there's a reason why there's millionaire or billionaires spending millions of dollars to try to get rid of unions. There's a reason why billionaires are spending millions of dollars to try to suppress the vote through voter ID legislation. This is all by design. And that's why I continue to fight. That's what keeps me running, quite frankly, keeps me engaged in the political battle because I do fine. I never act like I'm one of the folks that are out here struggling, but I see it, and I see it a lot of it. And you see it also being a firefighter, responding to calls. You run into all types of people, and you see people that are struggling, and if you don't do anything to help them out, then what are we doing? So that's why I got into politics. I'll continue to stay. I lost the recent election, but I'll still stay in the political arena and do anything I can to get elected officials elected that care about people or give a damn.
What about Mandela Barnes? What can you tell us about him?
He used to be a state representative. I actually have known Mandela for some time now. I think he'll make a great lieutenant governor. He's working hard. He did very well in the primary. And I think he'll make a great lieutenant. Being from Milwaukee, he knows firsthand. He grew up in the 53206 area code, one of the roughest area codes in the country. So he's seen a lot of people that have struggled. He comes from a labor family. So I think he'll make a great lieutenant governor, and I think it's a perfect complement to Tony Evers. It's a good combination for the state. Really good combination.
He's in his 30s, right?
Yeah, I think he's 32, maybe.
Yeah.
31 or 32. He's young. Yeah.
But you need that. You got kind of the Tony with all the experience up here and him bringing kind of that younger energy to it, and you got diversity there. Obviously, I don't think you could have two more diverse people standing side by side, right?
I think
Tony with the white hair. And
Tony's like 66, I think, and Mandela's 31 or 32, so I think together they're 48.
Yeah.
That's what they always say, I think.
You get a good combo. You cover a lot of ground there. You appeal to a lot of people, hopefully. What are some of the other races in this election that aren't getting as much attention that you think are really important?
Well, I think Tammy Baldwin, it's getting a lot of attention, but I think that's a very important race for the country. I know I talked with Leah Vukmir on behalf of firefighters at times for lobbying the interests of firefighters across the state. And Leah Vukmir is no friend of working people. So Tammy Baldwin, having her in the Senate is important, and it's key, in my opinion, of course, for the future of this country.
Can you tell me, I'm just going to ask you this about Tammy before we move on. So I've seen a bunch of things she's done. Okay. It seems like all of her initiatives, she's trying to do something to help better situations for veterans, for people that have given back to the country, have served, have done things where they're giving of themselves to take care of others and deserve it. And yet she's got people attacking her. For what? What has she done that anyone should reasonably attack? I don't get it.
Yeah, well, that's politics. I mean,
I know, but I mean, come on. Where's the leg they can stand on there? I don't see it.
I mean, that's just politics. They try to find something, anything that they can push out to general masses, and people will believe it. People believe it. I mean, there are, when we talk about people being engaged, even those that are somewhat engaged, there are a lot of voters that they, again, don't want to hear the noise. And when they see these commercials work, these negative attack ads work. That's why people get paid a lot of money to produce them and put them on TV. So they're always going to find something. I mean, when I ran for office, they said that I had a woman on the east side that I was shacking up with. Her name was Adrian Smith. Well, I own an apartment building on the east side with a man named Adrian Smith, who's also a firefighter. So they're going to make, if they don't have anything, they're going to make something up.
Oh, man.
So there's always going to be something. But that's an important race, though. Tammy is a great champion for working people across this country. So I've also been helping as much as I can, helping her to hopefully go over the finish line here.
Who else did you get to meet when you decided to make the run for governor? Anybody really cool that you got to meet that you otherwise might not have?
Yeah, I got to meet, when I ran for lieutenant governor and governor, between those two times, I've met a lot. I got to meet President Obama, Vice President Joe Biden. I got endorsed by Senator Kamala Harris out of California. So I got to meet her out in D.C. We were out there. Angela Rye, who's a political commentator on CNN. I got to meet her. I've gotten to meet a lot of cool people. If you're into politics, it's cool. If you're not in politics, then you really don't care. But a lot of great senators, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren. So I've got to meet a lot of. I got to meet John McCain. That was an honor, actually. So I got to meet a lot of good people in the political arena. So that's one cool thing about running for office and being in politics.
One thing I wanted to ask you about too. So with social media and the way it's kind of been infused with all of this stuff, what did I don't know, maybe you can compare a little bit to when you were running for lieutenant governor to where you're running for governor this year, and how different it was with the influence of social media back then versus now. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we even back then, when I first ran for lieutenant governor, I wasn't on Facebook or Twitter or anything. But now, obviously, since 2012, I have been, and we used digital. Our digital presence was really strong, and that's one way, a cheap way, to get to voters and get to masses of voters. So digital media, digital strategy is huge right now. We spent a lot of money on target messaging and pushing out different things and boosting posts on digital media. But it's crazy now because digital media, while it's great, can also hurt you because there's still the old-fashioned, old-school campaigning of going out and talking with people and pounding the flesh, so to speak. And that's kind of, I don't know if it's gotten lost, but people, I mean, you tune right in and you can see everything you want to see as opposed to actually even meeting people. And, you know, I had a tracker following me around. A tracker is someone that follows you around to hopefully hear you say something stupid or make a mistake.
Nice.
Then they roll it on digital media. They roll on Facebook or Twitter or what have you. And that's also the negative part of it. But I actually turned when my tracker was following me around, there's a video of me actually taping him. So I turned my phone around on him, and I said, well, let me tape you and ask you a bunch of crazy questions. And I did that.
That's great. That's a great approach. I mean, it's basically like having a shadow you don't want.
Yeah.
See what they're going to do. So before we kind of finish up here, and thanks again for taking all the time today, Mahlon Mitchell joining me on the program, and I'll have to plug that in there a little bit more. But when you look at just in general the process of this election and how you think the state can move forward after that. Okay, let's say things go the way that a lot of us hope that they do. And let's say we have a change in the governor's office and we have some changes that are going to swing things around and hopefully allow us to do more for the working class and people that are struggling. Do you think in this environment there's going to be enough momentum to carry those things through where those people can be effective? Because as soon as, if it changes, there's going to be nearly half the population that's going to be mad. Because we've divided this up to, now it's a neck and neck race, right?
Yeah.
So even when someone wins, there's still an uphill battle to fight.
Yeah, there's always going to be in politics, but you just hope after elections. It seems like now we're always just running elections. Like everything is about getting elected as opposed to actually getting anything done. And I think that's what's pissing off the majority of Americans, at least Wisconsinites for sure. It's that everything is about political gamesmanship as opposed to, okay, election's over, now let's get to work. So I don't know, man. I hope we can get back to a place where if you work with a Democrat and you're a Republican, it's not a bad deal. And if you work with a Republican and or a Democrat and you're a Republican, that's not like looked upon as being unfavorable. It's just, but right now it is. It's like everyone, if you get the majority, that's why I actually don't like majorities on either side, because then you don't have to work with the other side necessarily to get things passed. And it's always, I think you get a better result when you work with both sides. You may not get everything you want, but I think creative compromise is good as opposed to constant conflict. And hopefully after this election's done, of course, I want Tony to win, but even when he wins, hopefully there can be some healing where we bring our state back together and try to have some creative compromise. But I don't know.
What are the one last thing? Sorry. What are the biggest issues for the new governor to tackle? Is it education number one? What are the biggest?
I think education is number one, or I'd say top 3 or 4. Education. Yeah. I believe criminal justice reform is huge because we spend a lot of tax dollars on that. I think gerrymandering, the way the districts have been drawn up, I think there needs to be a bipartisan effort to have the districts drawn up in a bipartisan manner by 3 judges that are nonpartisan. I think we need to give the people of Wisconsin a raise. It'd be nice. I believe in the $15 an hour as a minimum wage, but that's just a start. And when you get more money in the hands of those working people, they spend it. And then when they spend money, that stimulates our economy. So then more goods and services have to be produced. More jobs then have to be put in place because there's more things being bought, right? And then people at the top still make money. And that's okay, as we said earlier. So in our healthcare system, people are, the ACA there are those up at federal level trying to make it collapse upon itself. So our markets aren't stabilized. So I think we need to have Badger Care for all here in the state so that we, at least in our state, are taking care of our people when it comes to healthcare, because who knows what's going to happen with the future of the ACA. So there's a lot of work there to be done. A lot.
Challenge for whoever is in there.
Whoever's in there.
All right, man. Well, hey, Mahlon Mitchell joining me today. Thanks
you
so much, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. It was fun.